When Clara brought home the small gray cat from the shelter, she thought she was finally doing something right. Her apartment felt too quiet lately, and she hoped a pet would fill the silence. The cat didn't purr much, just stared with calm, steady eyes that followed every move she made. That night, as she set its food down, she noticed it didn't eat. It just watched her, almost studying her face. She laughed it off, but something about those eyes made her uneasy. It didn't feel like a cat watching her. It felt like something else. Clara had been living alone since her breakup 6 months ago. The apartment walls had grown too familiar, too empty. When she walked into the local shelter, the gray cat sat alone in a back cage, quiet while others meowed and clawed for attention. The shelter worker looked relieved when Clara asked to take it. She said it had been there for months, no one wanting it. Clara smiled, signing the papers quickly. She didn't notice how the worker avoided eye contact, or how she quietly whispered, "Good luck," when Clara carried the crate out. The cat was heavier than it looked, its fur cool to the touch, like it had been sitting in a freezer. Clara tried to brush that off as she set the crate down in her living room. She left the door open, waiting for the cat to step out, but it didn't. It just stared from the shadows, tail still, eyes sharp. She crouched down and spoke softly, offering her hand. It blinked once but didn't move. "Shy," she whispered to herself, standing up. When she turned off the lights later, she could still feel its eyes watching. By morning the cat had moved, sitting near her bedroom door. Clara found it strange but comforting. She made coffee and smiled, thinking maybe it was warming up to her. When she placed a small bowl of food on the floor, it sniffed it once and walked away. She sighed and checked her phone, scrolling through messages from her mother, who kept asking when she'd start seeing people again. Clara didn't reply. She glanced back at the cat, which had jumped onto the windowsill, looking outside like it was waiting for someone. The first few days felt normal enough. Clara worked from home, the cat wandering quietly in the background, but it never played, never meowed, never curled up in her lap. It only watched. When she moved from room to room, its head turned, eyes locked on her every time. Sometimes she caught it staring into the mirror, its reflection delayed by a blink, as if lagging behind. "Creepy little thing," she muttered with a nervous smile, trying to convince herself it was just her imagination. But every night, the silence in her apartment grew heavier. That Friday, Clara noticed something strange on her window, a faint scratch, long and curved, like a small claw had dragged across the glass. She pressed her finger over it, but the mark was too deep. The cat sat nearby, tail flicking slowly. She knelt to check its paws, expecting broken nails or dirt, but they were spotless. She shrugged it off and went back to her desk, but the unease stuck with her. Later, when she looked again, she could swear there were 2 scratches now, both shaped like half moons. At work, Clara's coworkers teased her about becoming a cat mom. She smiled and played along, pretending everything was fine, but each night she slept less. The scratching sounds on her window grew faintly rhythmic, like something tapping in a pattern. Once, she thought she heard a distant bell ringing outside at the same time. When she looked out, the street was empty. The cat stood beside her on the table, still staring toward the glass, its pupils wide. Clara whispered its name, Milo, but it didn't react. It just kept listening. The next morning, Clara tried to reset her nerves. She opened the curtains, played music, and spoke to Milo like a friend. But when she went to feed him, she froze. The jar of imported honey she'd left sealed in her cupboard now sat open on the counter, sticky trails leading across the marble. She had never opened it. The cat sat by the jar, paws clean, staring again. She cleaned it up quickly, shaking her head. "Must have forgotten," she said aloud, but deep down she knew she hadn't. She'd never even broken that seal. Clara started keeping the cat in the spare room at night. She placed food, water, and toys inside, then shut the door gently. The first night, she finally slept deeply, waking up to sunlight on her face. She smiled until she noticed the sound, soft patting outside her door. When she opened it, Milo sat there, calm and patient, as if he had been waiting all night. The door to the spare room was still closed. She checked the lock twice. No sign of damage. She whispered to herself, "How did you get out?" To find answers, Clara ordered a small pet camera. She set it up in the hallway to watch the door overnight. The next morning, she checked the footage, heart racing. At first, everything looked normal. Milo sitting quietly near the door. Then, static. A full 2 seconds of glitching pixels, followed by the image of the cat now sitting outside the door. No movement in between. Clara replayed it several times, each time feeling colder. In the background of the static, she swore she could hear it. The faint sound of a bell ringing. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard that faint bell. She checked her phone's clock. 2:11 a.m. The sound came again, this time distant but real. She went to the window, opened it slightly, and leaned out. The street was empty. Milo sat behind her, tail twitching. Then, from the darkness outside, something answered. Not a sound, but a feeling, like being stared at from far away. She shut the window fast and whispered, "You're just tired." But she didn't believe her own voice. The next morning, Clara bought blackout curtains and covered every mirror in the apartment with bedsheets. She told herself it was temporary, that she just needed better sleep. But even in the dark, she sensed Milo moving. She started leaving the TV on low volume for comfort, the constant chatter helping drown the silence. One night, during an old sitcom rerun, the cat sat in front of the screen, staring as if it understood the words. When the laugh track played, it turned its head toward her, eyes almost questioning. Trying to regain control, Clara decided to track Milo's movements with the camera again. This time, she placed one in every room. The footage looked normal for hours, until the moment the hallway lights flickered. For a single frame, the cat wasn't there. Instead, something taller, darker, standing upright, partially blurred. Then Milo again. Clara froze, staring at the paused frame, heart pounding. She tried to tell herself it was a camera error, a trick of light, but her hands trembled. She couldn't shake the image of that shape where her cat should have been. That evening, she got a text from her friend Rachel, asking to come over. Clara hesitated but agreed. When Rachel arrived, she laughed at how dark the apartment was. "You're turning into a ghost," she teased. But when she bent down to pet Milo, the cat hissed, a low, deep sound that didn't fit its small body. Rachel jumped back, eyes wide. "That's not normal," she said, half joking. Milo backed away, tail still, watching her silently. Clara forced a laugh, but inside her stomach turned. For the first time, she wasn't sure it was safe. That night, Clara couldn't stop thinking about how Milo reacted to Rachel. It wasn't fear. It was defense. Like it was protecting something. Her, or maybe itself. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the faint hum of her refrigerator filling the silence. Around 3 a.m., she heard the soft creak of the floorboards in the living room. When she peeked out, Milo was standing on the couch, head turned toward the window again. The faint outline of something moved outside. Maybe wind, maybe not. She stayed still until sunrise. The next day, Clara searched for the shelter online to ask questions. The website was gone. Error 404. She tried the phone number, but it was disconnected. Confused, she checked her adoption papers, only to find the shelter's address smudged. Her name was clear, but the signature of the staff member looked like it had been overwritten several times. She set the papers down and stared at Milo, who was sitting on the table, eyes fixed on her again. It tilted its head, almost like it knew she had started to doubt everything. By now, Clara's sleep schedule was a mess. She'd startle awake at every sound. Once she woke to find Milo sitting inches from her face, its breath cool, eyes wide open. The next morning, she decided to buy a pet DNA test kit online. "Maybe it's just a weird breed," she said aloud, convincing herself this was a science problem, not a horror story. She took a small fur sample and mailed it. For the first time in weeks, she felt a bit of relief. But that night, she heard the bell again, closer this time. Rain started falling outside as Clara sat on her couch with a blanket, watching old videos on her phone. In one she laughed, holding a birthday cake for someone she used to love. She paused it and realized it had been exactly 1 year since that day. A forgotten birthday. She felt a pang of guilt, not for herself, but for the small, lonely creature staring from the hallway. She whispered, "You just want company, right?" But even saying it out loud didn't ease the strange sense that she was talking to something that understood too well. The following morning, Clara noticed something odd about Milo's reflection again. When she passed the hallway mirror, its reflection turned its head a moment after the real cat did. Just one delayed blink. But it chilled her. She touched the glass and whispered, "Stop it," like it was a person. The reflection seemed to pause. She stepped back, heart pounding, then heard the faint bell again. It wasn't outside this time, it was inside, near the kitchen, where the jar of honey still sat. The smell of it was stronger, almost sweet enough to make her dizzy. Clara opened all her windows to air out the apartment, breathing deeply. She thought she was losing it. She needed evidence, something clear, something normal. So she rewatched every camera clip she'd saved. Each time that same moment of static appeared, followed by silence, and the bell. Then her own faint voice whispering something she never said. "Don't let it out." She slammed her laptop shut, shaking. The cat appeared in the doorway again, watching her. For the first time, she said the words out loud. "You're not a cat, are you?" She sat by the window that evening, sipping tea as the rain started again. The sound of it on the pavement soothed her. For a few minutes, she felt almost normal. Milo sat nearby, tail wrapped neatly, calm and still. She stared out at the streetlights, wondering if loneliness could make someone imagine anything, even this. For a moment, she thought she saw another shape reflected in the glass beside her own, taller, human-like. But when she blinked, it was gone. The tea had gone cold in her hands. The next morning, Clara found something strange in the cat's food bowl. The kibble was untouched, but in the center sat a single feather, pale and clean. She picked it up, heart pounding. There were no open windows, no pillows with feathers, nothing that could explain it. Milo sat near the door, eyes locked on her hand, holding the feather. She placed it in a drawer and shut it tight, refusing to think more about it. But deep down, she knew that whatever was happening, it wasn't random. Something wanted her attention. The days blurred together. Clara worked, ate, barely slept. Every time she looked up, the cat was there, always in sight, always watching. Once, during a sudden power flicker, she saw it standing upright in the hallway mirror for half a second, too tall, too human. She blinked, and it was gone, back to normal. Her phone buzzed with another system update, but she ignored it. The air in the apartment felt heavier now, thick and damp, as if the rain had moved inside. Even breathing started to feel like effort. One night, Clara heard something crash in the kitchen. She ran in, heart pounding. The honey jar had shattered on the floor. The cat stood in the middle of the mess, unharmed, eyes reflecting the faint orange glow from the streetlight. She bent to clean up the shards, cutting her palm slightly. When her blood mixed with the honey, it fizzed, just for a moment, like something chemical reacting. The cat watched closely, lowering its head toward the floor, as if curious. She backed away slowly, whispering, "Stay there." It did, for now. The next morning, she finally got an email saying her DNA test was processing. It felt like hope. Some kind of logical explanation had to exist. She went about her day trying to act normal, humming while making breakfast. But Milo didn't move from the same spot near the broken jar, sitting perfectly still. That night, Clara dreamt again of that long hallway, the same one she had seen before. The bell rang louder this time, and she could sense something walking beside her, not behind, not ahead, but in step. When Clara woke, sunlight poured into the room, but the air still felt heavy, like the dream had followed her back. Her phone buzzed with another email. The DNA results were ready. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The message read only one line, inconclusive, "Please contact us immediately." She frowned, confused, and scrolled down. In small gray text at the bottom, a note said, "Sample contains unidentifiable sequences not belonging to any known species." Her stomach dropped. Milo sat by the bed, staring up at her, eyes calm and endless. Clara stared at the email for a long time, reading it over and over. Her first thought was that it had to be an error. Maybe she contaminated the sample somehow. She typed a reply asking for clarification, attaching a picture of Milo just in case. Her hands shook as she hit send. The air in the room felt colder now, heavier. When she looked down, the cat was gone from the floor. She turned slowly, scanning every corner until she saw it sitting by the window, watching the street like it was expecting someone. The reply came faster than she expected. The lab's message was short and unsettling. "We need to speak directly. Please confirm your number." Her stomach twisted. Before she could respond, the phone rang. A calm voice introduced himself as a technician. He asked where she got the animal. When she mentioned the shelter's name, there was silence on the other end, then a quiet, "That shelter was shut down years ago." Her throat went dry. He said they needed another sample, but his voice trembled when he added, "We're not sure it's an animal." Clara hung up, her pulse racing. She searched through her drawer for the adoption papers again. The ink on the top line had faded more since she last looked, like it was erasing itself. The address was barely readable. She rubbed her eyes, exhausted, then noticed something new. The paper felt damp, faintly sticky, like the honey that had spilled days before. She dropped it on the table, shaking her hands clean. Milo was now sitting beside the papers, head tilted, as if reading them too. For the first time, Clara whispered, "What are you?" That night, Clara dreamed again. The same hallway stretched endlessly ahead, glowing faintly with a golden light. The sound of the bell echoed louder, now steady and deliberate, like footsteps disguised as chimes. She turned to see a shape walking beside her, tall, blurred, familiar. When she woke, her sheets were damp with sweat. The cat lay on her chest, its eyes closed. For a brief second, its breathing matched hers exactly, rhythm for rhythm. She pushed it away gently, her heart hammering. It landed on its feet, silent, and stared at her in the dark. Clara got up before sunrise, her nerves frayed. She made tea and sat by the kitchen counter, staring at the steam curling from her cup. Milo hopped onto the table, sitting across from her. For a few minutes, it almost felt normal again. She reached out and brushed its fur, surprised by how warm it felt. Then its head turned toward the window, and she saw its reflection move half a second too late. She froze. The bell sound returned faintly, like it was coming from deep underwater. Her hands trembled. The tea tasted bitter now. Later that morning, her phone rang again. It was the lab technician. His tone was different this time, urgent but low. "Clara, we found human DNA," he said. Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" she asked. But the line went silent for a moment. Then he whispered, "It's not just human, it's altered." The call cut off before she could ask more. The cat sat on the couch, tail twitching slowly. She wanted to run, but something in its eyes held her there. It didn't look threatening anymore, only lost, almost like it wanted to speak. For the rest of the day, Clara couldn't focus. She paced around the apartment, glancing at the clock every few minutes. When the sun went down, she decided to go back to the shelter in person. Maybe someone was still there. Maybe the lab was wrong. She packed Milo into the carrier, but it didn't resist. The ride was quiet. The roads were nearly empty, and fog rolled over the fields. When she arrived, the shelter was nothing more than a boarded-up building with a rusted sign and broken windows. The silence around it felt unnatural. Clara sat in her car for a while, headlights dim against the fog. The air smelled damp, metallic. She stepped out, holding the carrier close. The boards on the shelter door were old and loose. She pushed one aside, stepping into the dark hallway. Dust floated in the beam of her phone's flashlight. Empty cages lined the walls, some bent, some open. A faint ringing sound echoed through the space. The bell again. She turned in circles, but there was no source. The cat stirred in the carrier, making a low sound that didn't belong to any animal. Deeper inside, she found a stack of old files scattered across a desk. Most were water-damaged, but one folder had a clear label, Project Echo. Inside were photographs of small gray creatures that looked almost like cats, but with human-like eyes. Her pulse quickened as she flipped through notes describing gene splicing experiments, failed growth cycles, and subjects marked missing. One photo stopped her cold. It was dated 6 years ago, and the animal in it looked exactly like Milo. She dropped the folder and backed away. The bell sound grew louder, followed by a low hum from the carrier. Panicked, Clara grabbed the carrier and ran out of the building. The fog was thicker now, pressing against her skin. She threw the carrier into the car and sped off, heart pounding. Her mind replayed the photos, the words human sequence. When she glanced at the passenger seat, the carrier was open. Milo sat calmly, watching her drive. She slammed the brakes, car jerking to a stop. The cat didn't move. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dashboard light. She whispered, "What do you want from me?" It tilted its head, and for a second, she thought it almost smiled. "If you've made it this far, you probably wouldn't sleep either. You might want to subscribe to see what happens next." Back home, Clara locked every door and window. She didn't dare touch the cat. It sat in the hallway, motionless, like it was waiting for her to calm down. She tried to call the lab again, but no one answered. The ringing tone on her phone matched the faint bell sound she kept hearing. It blended together until she couldn't tell which was real. Exhausted, she collapsed onto the couch. Hours passed. When she woke, the cat was gone again. The apartment felt colder than before, and the mirrors she had covered were now uncovered. She found Milo sitting in front of the largest mirror in her bedroom, its reflection different again. This time taller, more human. Clara froze, staring at both the cat and its reflection. Slowly, the reflection raised its head before the real cat did. The air felt thick, humming with quiet vibration. "Please stop," she whispered. The lights flickered, the bulb buzzing faintly. When the reflection blinked, she saw her own eyes flicker too, for just a moment, like something else was looking through her. Then everything went still again. The reflection smiled faintly before returning to normal. Clara backed out of the room, closing the door. Her breathing was uneven, her mind racing. She went to the kitchen, splashed cold water on her face, and stared into the sink. "You're losing it," she whispered. Behind her, the floor creaked. She turned slowly, expecting Milo. But it wasn't him. It was the tall, shadowed figure from her dream, standing in the hallway, motionless. It had her outline but not her face, just smooth gray where features should be. She blinked, and it vanished. The cat sat there again, head low, tail wrapped tight. For hours, Clara sat on the floor, shaking. Every instinct told her to run, but she felt rooted. Something about Milo's calmness kept her still. She looked at him and said, "You're not trying to hurt me, are you?" The air shifted, almost like it sighed in response. The bell rang again, louder this time, clear and close. Milo turned toward the sound, ears twitching. Then he stood, walked to the living room mirror, and sat directly in front of it. The bell echoed once more. His reflection didn't move. Clara walked closer, one slow step at a time. The cat stayed still. Its reflection remained frozen. When she crouched beside it, she saw something else in the mirror. Not herself, but the hallway from her dreams. The reflection showed her standing there, holding the cat, surrounded by endless golden light. Her real body trembled as she whispered, "What are you showing me?" The reflection of Milo turned its head toward her, though the real one hadn't moved. She stumbled back, heart pounding, unable to look away. The mirror rippled slightly, like water disturbed by sound. The faint bell grew sharper, almost metallic. The air vibrated as if the whole room was breathing. Milo stepped forward, pressing his paw to the glass. The reflection mirrored it perfectly, but a small handprint appeared beside it, not a paw, a hand. Clara gasped, stepping back. Her reflection tilted its head, lagging behind her movements. "You're not a cat," she whispered again, voice shaking. The reflection blinked once, then twice. The sound of the bell became steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat trying to match hers. She realized then it wasn't a warning. It was a call. Everything in the apartment dimmed as if power drained from the air. The clock froze. The rain outside went silent. Milo turned toward her, eyes glowing faintly, and for the first time she didn't feel afraid. "You remember me, don't you?" she said softly. Though she didn't know why, her own voice sounded distant. The reflection stepped closer, now moving on its own, hand pressed to the glass. The bell rang once more, then faded into silence. Milo blinked slowly, and in that blink, she saw flashes, lab lights, cages, human faces blurred by time. Tears filled Clara's eyes as she realized the truth. Whatever Milo was, it wasn't evil. It was lost. Something made, abandoned, forgotten. Maybe it had been calling her because she was the only one who listened. The mirror shimmered faintly again, and she saw her own image standing beside the creature's reflection. Both looked at her with quiet sadness. She whispered, "You're home now," unsure where the words came from. The air grew lighter, warmer. The faint smell of honey filled the room. The reflection blinked one last time, then matched her exactly again. Milo stepped back from the mirror and sat down, curling into himself like an ordinary cat. The lights steadied, the hum stopped, and the air felt clear for the first time in weeks. Clara knelt beside him, gently resting her hand on his back. He didn't move, only closed his eyes. The faint ringing sound returned once, softer this time, fading like a lullaby. She whispered, "You can rest now." The reflection behind her nodded faintly, though she hadn't moved. For the first time she believed it was over. The apartment was silent again. Days passed. The lab sent one more email, but she didn't answer. She deleted it without reading. There was peace in not knowing, in letting the mystery remain. Milo followed her around the apartment again, quiet but calm, no longer watching her with those searching eyes. Sometimes at night, she thought she heard the bell faintly in her dreams, distant but comforting. She'd wake to find him sleeping beside her, warm against her leg. For the first time in months, she felt like she wasn't living alone anymore. Clara started keeping a small journal again, writing about her days, nothing special. She didn't mention the mirror, the bell, or the lab. Just simple things, what she cooked, how much Milo slept, the weather outside. Life slowly began to feel normal. But once in a while, she'd catch herself staring into the mirror and wondering if someone else was staring back. She'd smile and shake her head. "You're fine," she'd whisper. Milo would lift his head, eyes half open, as if he understood. It became their quiet routine, the strange calm after everything. On her kitchen table sat a stack of postcards she'd never sent, notes to herself she had written during her loneliest nights. They said things like, "You're still here," and "Keep going." She looked through them now, smiling faintly. She placed one beside Milo's bowl, the one that read, "You're not alone." That night she fell asleep on the couch. The window opened slightly, the sound of distant rain soothing her. For the first time in months, she dreamed of nothing. Morning came gently, sunlight spilling across the floor. Clara woke to find the feather she had once locked in her drawer, sitting on the coffee table. She picked it up, smiling instead of panicking. Milo was asleep nearby, peaceful and still. Outside, the street was quiet. She made coffee and sat down beside him, watching the steam rise from her cup. There was no fear now, just a strange understanding that some questions didn't need answers. Some things were meant to stay half known, half real. Later that week, she got a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single line written in neat handwriting. "Thank you for keeping one of us safe." No name, no signature. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in the same drawer as the postcards. When she turned around, Milo was watching her, tail flicking lazily. She smiled and said, "Guess we're both mysteries now." He blinked slowly, eyes soft, then curled up in the sunspot by the window, purring quietly for the first time. That evening, Clara stood by the window as the sun went down, the sky painted in soft gold and gray. The faint ringing of a bell drifted through the open air, one last time. She turned and looked at her reflection, expecting the usual lag, but this time it moved with her perfectly. She smiled at the calm image, staring back. On the floor, Milo stretched, his eyes half closed, peaceful. The world outside dimmed into twilight, and for the first time since she adopted him, Clara felt something she hadn't in a long time: complete.